Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So last lesson we went through Arkanus Salat, so the integral parts of prayer. And then we also went through Sunan as-Salat, the different recommended additional parts of prayer that we can do to make our prayer more complete. So today we're going to carry on with Salat and we're going to cover Nawaqid as-Salat, and then we're going to go through the different Sunan prayers, inshallah. Okay. So before we move on, from the last lesson, are there any questions anybody has? Anything that wasn't clear that you want cleared up on before we move on, inshallah? Okay. If you can't see anything, then if you're typing or you want to see anything, then type it in hashtag voice, inshallah. Then I can see. Okay. Okay, nothing. Alhamdulillah, that's fine. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديك ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. So like I said today, inshallah, we're going to be covering Nawaqid as-Salat. So before we go to Nawaqid as-Salat, who knows what the word Nawaqid means? What's the meaning of the word Nawaqid? If somebody can answer for us, please. If I say Nawaqid al-Islam, what does that mean? Or Nawaqid as-Salat, what does it mean? Or Nawaqid al-Wudu? Yeah, it means to nullify something. So nullify meaning that thing is no longer valid. Okay, so it becomes zero from the word null. Okay. So Nawaqid as-Salat, they are in the Shafi'i madhab, there are 14 of them. So the first one is Hadath. Who remembers what Hadath is? We went through this before. Hadath. What's a Hadath? It's a type of impurity, but what kind of impurity is a Hadath? Does anyone remember? Okay, nobody remembers, that's fine. So Hadath is a spiritual impurity, is a spiritual state of impurity that you enter. For example, if you urinate, you've entered into a state of Hadath because you are spiritually impure. Okay? So, if you enter into a state of Hadath, or you were in a state of Hadath, and you didn't do wudu, then your salah is invalid. Meaning, you start praying, Allahu Akbar, and then you remembered, oh, I didn't do wudu. Your salah is no longer valid, you have to go and do wudu and then repray. Similar situation, you pray dhuhr, and you remember and you're certain that you didn't have wudu when you prayed dhuhr, then you have to repray dhuhr. Your dhuhr wasn't valid because you didn't do wudu. You didn't meet the conditions of prayer. If an imam is leading, okay, and the imam, he remembers he didn't do wudu, and he led people, it is only the imam who has to redo his prayer. It's only his prayer that's invalid. Everyone else's prayer is fine. So the jama'ah that he led, they don't have to redo their salah. Okay? Does that make sense? That's a bit confusing. Okay. The next one is Khabath. Remember, Khabath is a physical impurity, sorry. So, for example, feces, urine, vomit, blood going on the clothes or the body. So, if impurity goes on your body and you don't remove it immediately, then you redo the prayer. Your prayer is not valid, you have to repray. For example, a bird comes and it poos on you. You quickly wipe it off. Okay, if you can do that and then there's no trace of it, then your prayer is fine. But if you didn't do it, and the najasa stayed on you for a long time, then your prayer is no longer valid. Likewise, if the Imam is leading and there was impurity on his clothing, then the entire Jama'ah, everyone who's praying behind him, has to repeat the prayer if they could see the najasa. Okay? So if the najasa is on his back, for example, I don't know, a dog came and went on his back and everybody saw him, then they will have to redo their prayer. The prayer is no longer valid. If the najasa wasn't visible, for example, the Imam, it's a bad Imam, he had a little accident when he was praying. Okay? He had a little accident when he was praying and then nobody else saw the najasa. Everybody else's prayer is fine, but the Imam has to repeat the prayer. Okay, so he had a hidden accident, we'll call it, if that makes sense. Okay, so what is meant by immediately is just the time that you can say Subhanallah. So in that, 2 seconds that you take to say Subhanallah. Okay. So the next one is the awrah becoming uncovered, becoming uncovered and not covered in time. The meaning of this is, for example, a woman is praying and her headscarf slips and her hair becomes visible. If she immediately covers it, her prayer is fine. She doesn't have to stop praying. Likewise for a man. Sometimes men, when they do sujood, the shorts tend to slide down. In this case, if they manage to cover up quickly, their prayer is valid. If they don't manage to do it, then their prayer is no longer valid. They have to stop praying. So the brother asked if the Imam can go make ghusl fast and then come back and continue prayer. No, he can't do that. Okay, you can't. The prayer is no longer, it's not valid at all if you haven't met the conditions of being physically and spiritually pure. Okay. So the next one, number 4. Intentionally saying 1 or 2 letters. This breaks the prayer. It's called qahqaha. Okay, that invalidates the prayer. But if you say syllables, formable words, then the prayer is no longer valid as well. The next one is to break the fast, and the meaning of this, to break the fast, is when something enters into the mouth of food, so you eat a lot of food and you don't know that you're eating. Sometimes people who are really hungry, they can do this. Okay, so they eat a lot of food, the prayer is no longer valid. But if they just a tiny bit of food they eat forgetfully, it is okay. Okay, how about now? Am I better? Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, where was I? So I believe breaking the fast. So if anything enters into the cavity beyond the uvula, then the prayer is no longer valid at that point. Meaning, if it is done intentionally. If anything enters beyond the uvula intentionally, even if it's a stick, then the prayer is no longer valid. But if somebody eats a tiny bit intentionally and unintentionally, then the prayer is still valid. But if they eat a lot intentionally, forgetfully, without intention, then the prayer is no longer valid as well. So let me recap. If anything passes the uvula of the mouth, in the back of the mouth, intentionally, prayer is no longer valid. If you eat a tiny bit whilst praying, the prayer is still valid. If you eat a lot forgetfully, then the prayer is no longer valid. Okay? I don't know, you could be hungry, very hungry, and somebody's walking past with food and you just snatch some accidentally and you without thinking and you eat it. Also, it's makruh to pray when you're hungry and the food is in front of you. Whenever the food is in front of you and you still have time, it becomes a very big necessity that you should eat first, so you don't distract yourself from prayer. So the next one is to do 3 consecutive movements even if they are done involuntarily. Okay? So if you absent-mindedly step 3 steps forward, 1, 2, 3 at the same time, even if you're not thinking, then the prayer is no longer valid. Okay? Okay, you can't see the PowerPoint. I don't know. Can everyone else see it? I can only see 10 spectators though. Okay. So the salah is invalidated by adding, even if absent-mindedly, a motion that is not from the actions of salah. Okay? So to be consecutive and 3 consecutive things. So 1, 2, 3 steps forward. It's not allowed. It invalidates the prayer. Okay? The next one is extra movement that is contrary to the habit of a sane person. Meaning, if you suddenly, when you're praying and you suddenly start jumping when you're praying, prayer is no longer valid. You just jump once. Why would you jump in prayer? It's strange for us to jump in prayer. And if you do so, your prayer is no longer valid. Or you flap your arm around like for no reason, it will be no longer valid. Just once. Okay. The next one is excessive hand movement, so moving your hand around too much, like waving your hand around and so on, or hitting the hand on the floor, or whatever. The prayer is no longer valid. So a slight movement, like taking your finger to scratch your leg, for example, that's okay, that's allowed. It doesn't break the salah. Even if the finger moves up and down when you're, to scratch. If your neck snaps to the left, that's fine. But, it's something that's a sane person wouldn't do. Okay. The next one is to add a rukun of salat that is not there. So if I intentionally do 3 sujood, then the prayer has finished. I can't pray anymore. It's not valid. You can't do 3 sujoods. You've added to the arkan of salat and the prayer is over. The next one is to precede the Imam by 2 arkan. Okay? So, if you do 2 things before the Imam, such as if I do my ruku' and i'tidal and I go down to sujood, but the Imam is still on his ruku', then my prayer is no longer valid. I can't do that. If you do so without thinking about it, absent-mindedly, or you do so in ignorance that you can do this, that you can go faster than the Imam, then the prayer is no longer valid. But you have to repeat the rak'ah after. Okay? So after the Imam finishes, you do an extra rak'ah because you were in front of the Imam. The next one is being behind the Imam by 2 rukun. Okay? So, without an excuse. So if you're like an really old man or really old woman, and it takes you a long time to do stuff, then that's a good example of an udhr, an excuse that it protects you from this invalidate of salah. Without an excuse, it is generally makruh to lag behind the Imam. Okay, and if you are behind him by 2 arkan, the prayer is finished. So if the Imam is in sujood and you're still reading Fatiha, then you can't pray behind him. It's not valid anymore. Okay, so the next 2 are slightly confusing. So intending to stop the prayer by doing an action that isn't part of it. So you're in sujood, you're in tashahhud now, you're sitting down, and you suddenly lie down across the floor, intending to stop praying. Or you get up to go and open the door whilst you're praying. Once you've done this, just the intention of having this, the intention to get up and go and open the door, someone knocked at it when you're praying, the salah is no longer valid. Okay? And the last one is, if you don't know whether you had the intention or not, you have the doubts about whether you intended to stop the salah or not. So you say, should I stop intending the salah or should I continue the prayer? This alone, this doubt, it breaks the salah. The thought of it doesn't break the salah, but the having the doubt in the heart about it, whether, should I carry on praying, should I stop praying? That stops the prayer as well. So there's a somewhat famous hadith of a Sahabi who was being called by the Prophet ﷺ, but he was praying and he didn't stop praying. Okay, and then the Prophet ﷺ scolded him for not for not stopping the prayer for him, for not pausing the prayer. So the explanation for this is a matter that's abrogated. This was an early ruling that whilst praying you could stop doing you could like pause in prayer. Okay, you could pause in prayer and go and do whatever you want, and then come back to the prayer. This was abrogated, and you could no longer do this. Okay, so if you pause the prayer is invalid. Similar situation with I believe there's a narration about Aisha radiallahu anha going and opening the door while she was praying, and then coming back to her salah. This is also a matter that is abrogated, and you can no longer do this. So the brother asked, if salah is broken, do you get rewarded for the arkan you prayed as nawafil? And the answer to that is I don't know. But I don't know, and you know, if the salah was invalid, then absolutely not. Okay, but like I said, I don't know about if the prayer was invalid because you don't have wudu, then you won't get any reward. But like I said, I don't know after that. Okay, is there any questions about nawaqid as-salat, the things that invalidate the prayer? Anything that's not clear? Okay, no questions. Let's move on. Oh, there's a question. If someone is playing music after I already started praying, no, you don't have to redo. The sin of listening to music is physically intending to listen to it. Okay? But not if you're not hearing it. Just hearing music is not a sin. So yeah, your question was, did you waste your time? And like I said, I don't know. Okay, I don't know if you get rewarded for that. I haven't seen anything myself, but inshallah you can go research that for yourself, inshallah. Okay. Moving on. Okay. So sunan rawatib. The sunnah that you do before and after the fard prayers. Okay, sorry, before me move on, the brother asked if someone walks in front of you while praying, no, that it doesn't invalidate your prayer. But you should, yeah, the Prophet ﷺ said if he forcefully is coming in front of you, you should fight him to stop him, because the sin is on him. And you stop your Muslim brothers from getting sin, inshallah. So put your arm in front to prevent him, but if he's intent on passing in front of you, then you have to fight him to stop him. But it doesn't, it doesn't invalidate your prayer. You don't get any sin for doing that. Okay, so sunnah rawatib, the sunnah you do before and after the fard salat. Okay, and these are simple. So from the slideshow, the ones in black are the normal ones, the rawatib. Okay, the rawatib sunnah. The ones in red are the sunnah mu'akkada. They are the recommended, highly recommended sunnah. According to the Shafi'i and Hanbali and Maliki madhahib, they are just sunnah. It doesn't matter if you do them or not. It's sunnah if you do it. If you do even the mu'akkada, if you do them, you get good deeds. If you don't do them, you get nothing. According to the Hanafi madhab, if you every day you make it a habit to neglect the mu'akkada, the major sunnah, the ones in red, then according to the Hanafi madhab, you are sinful for doing so. Okay, that's according to the Hanafi madhab. Remember, we're studying Shafi'i fiqh. So according to Shafi'i madhab, it is okay to not do them at all. But doing them is a major sunnah. A sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ would very, very rarely neglect. That's the meaning of a sunnah mu'akkada. Very rarely, if never neglect. So, before Fajr, you do 2 sunnah rawatib, and then 2 sunnah mu'akkada. And then remember, praying after Fajr is haram. It is sinful to pray after Fajr. Okay? So remember, with the sunnah prayers, all of the sunnah prayers, you pray in groups of 2 in the Shafi'i madhab. You pray 2, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, pray another 2. You never pray in a group of 4. Always 2 and 2. So for Fajr, like I said, 2 rawatib, 2 mu'akkada. Before the Fajr salat, and then afterwards it's haram to pray. For Dhuhr, 2 rawatib, and then another 2 sunnah mu'akkada before it. So 4 before it, and then 4 for dhuhr, and then 2 rawatib after it, and then another 2 after it. They are mu'akkada, meaning a total of 12 raka'at sunnah for fajr, for dhuhr, sorry. For asr, there's just 4 rawatib before it. So remember 2 plus 2 before asr, and then remember after asr it is haram to pray. And it is also haram to pray the sunnah of asr if you have delayed the asr until the sun has started to set, but not completely set. So when the sun becomes yellowy, it is haram to pray any sunnah prayers. You can only pray the fard prayers. For maghrib, there are 2 nawafil prayers. Okay, they're just 2 recommended prayers. They're not recommended, so they're not mu'akkada and they're not rawatib before maghrib. But it stays recommended to pray 2, but they're not rawatib or mu'akkada. So that's why I put it in light blue. And then after it, we have 2 rawatib and 2 sunnah mu'akkada. And the last one, it should say fajr, isha, sorry, I don't know why I wrote fajr. They're fixed. So 0 before, and then 2 rawatib and 2 sunnah mu'akkada after it. Okay. Okay, are there any questions on the rawatib salat? And on the rawatib salat, the salatul nafila, the super, the extra prayers that you can do. If you remember the hadith Qudsi, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the servant gets closer to him, becomes more beloved to him through doing additional sunnah. So these sunnah prayers, they are the best way of becoming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the brother wants me to explain Fajr again. So Fajr, you pray 2 rawatib, and then 2 sunnah mu'akkada before Fajr. And then you pray Salatul Fajr. So it's a total of 6 raka'at. And then after Fajr, it's haram to pray. You're not allowed to pray at all after Fajr until the sun has risen. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So if you want to start praying the rawatib, so the rawatib is just a normal sunnah, and the mu'akkada is a major sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ would very rarely, if ever, neglect. Okay, so he'd pretty much 99.9% of the time pray the sunnah mu'akkada, but he didn't say they were fard. So remember, according to the Hanafi madhab, neglecting the sunnah mu'akkada, neglecting it entirely, is fisq, is makes you sinful. But neglecting it here or there is okay, according to the Hanafi madhab. So if you want to start praying the additional prayers, just start off with the sunnah mu'akkada. Okay, the emphasized sunnah. And they are just 10 raka'at. Okay? So you should all start praying them, inshallah. Okay. Moving on. So, Salatul Witr. Salatul Witr is prayed after Isha. After you pray the Isha, the 4 sunnah for Isha, then you pray Witr. Okay? The minimum number of raka'at for witr that you can pray are just one raka'ah. So you just pray 1 raka'ah and you finish. The recommended minimum number that you should do is 3 raka'at, meaning you pray 2 raka'at, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and then you pray 1 raka'ah additionally. Or you can do all the way up to 11. So the recommended number is 11. So you should either do 3 or 11 if you're going to do it. 3 or 11. That's the sunnah. Like I said, you pray 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, and then you pray 1 alone. So I don't know why I wrote it in that order. That order is wrong that I've written there. Let me correct that. So it should be like this. So you pray 2 and 2 and 2 and then 1, or 2 plus 1, or just 1. And the sunnah to pray it, the sunnah way, in the first raka'ah, you recite Suratul A'la, in the first raka'ah, and Suratul Kafirun in the second raka'ah. And then in the one where you pray only 1 raka'ah, you recite Suratul Ikhlas, Suratul Falaq, and Suratul Nas. Okay, so remember, Suratul A'la is Iqra' bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, And then in the second rak'ah you recite قل يا أيها الكافرون, and then in the one rak'ah you recite قل هو الله أحد قل أعوذ برب الفلق and قل أعوذ برب الناس. So that's when you're praying 3. That's the recommended way of praying them. Does anyone have any questions about witr? And remember, in witr, in the Shafi'i madhab, in witr, it is wajib, so it is, you have to pray, you have to do dua al-qunut. Ala. Did I say alaq? Sorry. صبح اسم ربك الأعلى. No, اقرأ. I don't know why I said اقرأ. Go to ala. Thank you for correcting me. So during witr, it is sunnah for you, it's not, sorry, it's wajib for you, you have to pray with dua al-qunut in the last rak'ah. So you need to make the dua. And the minimum of this dua is to say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa ala ashabi Muhammad. That is the minimum qunut that you can do. But qunut, you can say whatever dua you want. And there is the dua al-qunut which we went through last lesson, inshallah. If you want to remember, if you want to know the whole qunut, then go watch the last lesson, or go, inshallah, go search for it online, and you'll get a good answer for it. But in qunut, it is enough for you to say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa ala ashabi Muhammad. That's enough. But you can make any dua you want. So it is common in qunut for people, for example, when there's a calamity for the Muslims, you will say Allahumma sur al-Muslimin, Allahumma damir a'da' ad-din, and so on, or whatever calamity there is. So for coronavirus, for example, you can make dua saying Allahumma inna na'udhu bika min at-ta'un. Oh, Allah protect us from this plague. Okay, so you can make any dua you want, as long as you make the minimum dua as well. Okay. Moving on, inshallah, unless anybody has any questions about witr. Again, in the Hanafi madhab, praying witr is considered wajib, meaning if you don't pray witr, if you miss it frequently you miss it, then you become a sinner. But if you miss it once in a while, it's okay. That is the Hanafi madhab. Okay, moving on. So Tarawih is prayed every night of Ramadan after Salatul Isha. After the Sunnah for Isha, you pray Tarawih, and then in Ramadan after Tarawih you pray Witr. Okay, that's the Sunnah. And then in Tarawih, it is recommended in the Shafi'i madhab that you pray 20 raka'at. That's the Shafi'i opinion, that you pray 20. However, 8 is also acceptable in the madhab. So either 20 is recommended, but 8 is acceptable. And like I said, it is prayed every night of Ramadan. Okay, but on the last day that you fast, you don't pray witr. You don't pray Tarawih, sorry, because that's the night of Eid. You don't pray Tarawih on that day. So Tarawih, it starts from the first time the moon is seen for the month of Ramadan, and the last time it is prayed, it is the night before Eid. The night before the night of Eid, sorry. Okay, so one day before Eid is the last time you pray Tarawih. You don't pray on the night of Eid itself. Does that make sense? Is there any questions about Tarawih? Okay, no, that's fine. Let's move on, inshallah. Okay. So, Tahajjud. Tahajjud is one of the most emphasized sunnah, Qiyamul Layl. Okay? Qiyamul Layl and Tahajjud. So praying, standing up in the night for prayer. This is one of the most major of the sunnah. So even if you do just 2 raka'at is enough for Tahajjud. And the best time for it is to do it in the last third of the night. Okay, so remember, the night in Islam, we split it into thirds and a half. After the first third of the night, it becomes sunnah to pray Isha. After the first half has passed, it is makruh or haram to pray Isha after that time. And then in the last third of the night, so in the 66% point of the night, it becomes sunnah to pray Tahajjud. Tahajjud, sorry. Tahajjud and Qiyamul Layl, the difference between them, the generally accepted difference between them, is that Qiyamul Layl is any prayer you pray in the night. Tahajjud is a prayer you pray after you sleep and you wake up for it. So you have to, for tahajjud, for it to become tahajjud, you should wake up. You sleep and then wake up. If you're just awake at night and you pray, that's qiyamul layl. If you sleep, wake up, then you intend for tahajjud instead. Okay. So we move on to the next sunnah salah, and it is Salatul Duha. Okay. So the next one, Salatul Duha. Salatul Duha, it is the mid-morning salah. It's a sunnah. The time for Salatul Duha, it starts when the sun has risen a spear length in the sky. So a decent, moderate distance in the sky. So that's typically about 20 to 30 minutes after sunrise. That's when you can pray Salatul Duha. And its time ends when the sun has risen to midday. At that time, you can no longer pray. It's haram to pray from that time on. The minimum number of raka'at for duha is 2, and the optimal number that you should pray is 8 raka'at. Remember, 8 meaning 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, with a salam in between all 2 of them. Okay, and the maximum you can pray for duha is 12 raka'at. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about any of the sunnah salat that we've been through? Isha before you can do witr? No, you don't have to pray any sunnah before you can do witr. You can pray Isha and then straight away witr. No, duha is a minimum of 2 raka'ah. Optimal number, recommended amount of raka'at is 8, and a maximum of 12. And one final sunnah prayer that I forgot to include is Tahiyyatul Masjid, and the reason I didn't do it, it is simple. Tahiyyatul Masjid is just when you enter the masjid, before you talk to anyone, before you sit down, you just pray 2 sunnah raka'at. Okay, so just 2 sunnah raka'at as soon as you enter the masjid. If you sit down, you can no longer pray Tahiyyatul Masjid. Okay? So it's very simple. This is Tahiyyatul Masjid, meaning you are greeting the masjid. So the question of can you pray Tahiyyatul Masjid during the khutbah is a more in-depth question, inshallah, that you can research. But it's a more detailed discussion between the madahib and even the ulama themselves. And generally you shouldn't pray in the forbidden times, Tahiyyatul Masjid. Okay, is there anything I've missed? I had something on my head that slipped now, my mind. What was it? Okay, Salatul Duha, the Prophet ﷺ, the sunnah, like I said, is to pray 8, but you can also pray 2, it's okay. You can pray 2, 4, 6, or 8. But remember, 8 is the recommended amount. Okay. There is one more prayer that is sunnah, and this is Salatul Eid. But inshallah, we will go through Salatul Eid and all the different Salatul Eid, Salatul Khawf. Inshallah, we'll go through this in another time. Inshallah. So, how many raka'at should you pray each day? Why don't we calculate how many raka'at you can pray? Okay, let's calculate. Okay. So before Fajr we said 4, and then there's 2 for Fajr, and then for Dhuhr there's 4 plus 4 plus 4, and then for Duha there's 8, which I forgot to include. Okay, and then what else? And then for Asr there's 4 plus 4, for Maghrib 2 plus 3. Duha, remember, is before Dhuhr. You pray Duha, sunrise, and then Dhuhr time. So Maghrib is 2 plus 3 plus 4. Isha is Isha was none before, and then 4 for Isha plus 4. That's the normal. Can someone calculate this number for us? Somebody who's fast with numbers. I mean, many of you are Pakistani, Afghanistani, or Indian. You should all be good with numbers. You're all Asian. Asians are good with numbers. Come on. Don't disappoint. Don't disappoint your ethnicity. 47. I have to do it myself. Okay, I got 55. I don't know. If somebody else can calculate for us, or somebody can inform us of the correct number. 51. Okay, we'll write 51. That's fine. So that's 51 on a normal day. Okay? And then we have Tarawih. Tarawih, we said it's 20 raka'ah. So you can, on the Ramadan nights, you pray 20. Oh, we forgot to include witr. Oh, okay. So that's without witr. And then with witr, we said witr is a minimum of 3. So that's 54. Or if you choose to pray the maximum for witr, you're going to pray 11. So that's 51 plus 11 is going to be 62. And then if you're also praying Tarawih, where did I get that 5 from? You're also going to pray Tarawih, it's going to become 20 plus 62. And that's going to be 82. And if you're also going to pray, Qiyamul Layl or Tahajjud, it's going to be a minimum of 2 raka'ah, it's going to become plus 2. And say you pray, every prayer you pray in the masjid, because you're a good Muslim and you go and pray in the masjid, because praying in the masjid is one of the greatest sunnah, and according to the Shafi'i madhab, like we said, praying in the masjid is fard kifaya. And according to Imam Nawawi, if you can hear the adhan without any physical, like auditory aid, if you can hear the adhan, according to Imam Nawawi, it becomes wajib for you to pray in the masjid. And this is probably the most correct opinion according to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. That if you can hear the adhan, then you must pray in the masjid. It becomes wajib upon you to enter the masjid and pray with the jama'ah. And this is the most correct opinion. Okay, even this is Imam Nawawi's opinion. So you say you're going to pray every prayer in the masjid. It's going to be 84. If you're going to pray every prayer in the masjid, so that's going to be 2 times 10. You're going to have another 2 times 10, 2 times 5, sorry, another 10. So we come at a figure of 94 possible salat that you can pray in a day. Raka'at, sorry. These are the amounts of raka'at that you can pray. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with just standing up and doing 2 raka'at sunnah, because you're a Muslim. Okay. So other than this mathematical question by Sabr, does anybody else have any questions that they would like to ask? Anything you don't understand? Anything confusing? Anything you want clarified? It doesn't matter if it's about fiqh, hadith, Arabic, anything, inshallah, I can help you with. Sabr's about to be asking me a very good question. It's anime haram. I'm not going to answer that question. I think we've already been through its anime haram or not. It's a question that's, old question. Okay. Any other questions, or is it just about anime, which I'm not going to answer? Is music halal? Music is not halal. Can you do sadl? Yeah, you can do sadl. Why would you do sadl when you're getting good deeds? So just putting your hands upon your belly, your navel, just putting your hands like that, you've got 2 good deeds. Why wouldn't you do it? Can you do sadl in the entire salah? You can do sadl. It's not. If you do sadl or no, it doesn't. So sadl meaning putting your arms by your side. Yeah, you can. It's not like your prayer is no longer valid for doing sadl. But why would you neglect the sunnah? You can get sunnah that easily by putting your hands like that. Why would you not do that? Can you sit down for sunnah prayers? The answer is yes. You can sit down for sunnah prayers. It's not a pillar of salah. For sunnah prayers, you have to stand. You only have to stand if you can for the fard prayers. For other prayers, you can sit down. I am Maliki, my mom didn't teach me sadr. MashaAllah, you have a very good mother. May Allah bless her and bless you. And you pray Sunnah prayers with your eyes only? No, you can't. Okay. You have 2 more minutes to ask any questions you want, inshallah. No, you can't pray with your eyes. You have to pray physically. If you can pray physically, you pray physically. It's only the sitting that you can do in the Sunnah prayers. Who is more knowledgeable, Imam Malik or Imam Ahmed? Each Imam, they had their specialties. They had things they were good at. They had things, that they had differences of opinion in different fundamental principles that they had. There's no way you can answer, is Imam Malik better than Imam Ahmed? You shouldn't compare the Ummah like this. They were both invaluable in what they gave to the Ummah. Just because you're Hanbali or Shafi'i, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You shouldn't compare the Imams. You shouldn't have ta'asub towards the Imams. So Imam Malik, he was one of the great Imams, one of the first Imam, the greats. He was one of the first of his generation, Tabi'in, and he learned from the greatest of the Tabi'in in Medina. And he was a great muhaddith, and he was a great faqih in Medina. May Allah bless him and reward him. Yeah, he was from Medina. He was from the blessed city of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, and he got barakah from being in Medina. I mean, Imam Malik was the first person to write a proper book of hadith. Okay, the Muwatta of Imam Malik was the first book of hadith. Musnad Imam Ahmad, he just collected all the hadith he could. And the reason it's called a Musnad is because it is arranged by narrator. Imam Malik's Muwatta, on the other hand, it is a book of hadith meant to be used for fiqh. So the way it is ordered, it is answering fiqh masail. Okay? So you're not going to compare. You can't really compare these two books. Muwatta Imam Malik is about a book of trying to get Islamic law from a hadith or from the opinions of the Sahaba and Tabi'in. But Musnad Imam Ahmad is just a very, very large book of hadith containing as many hadith as he could, arranged by narrator. So I believe there's about 32,000 hadith in Musnad Imam Ahmad. Imam Shafi'i said Imam Ahmad was better. Yeah, maybe in hadith he was better. Imam Ahmad was probably one of the greatest muhaddithin of the ummah. But you can't really compare these imams in this manner. You can't say greatest. Even in hadith, there's different topics in hadith, different fields, such as the field of ilal. So finding defects in hadith, and the greatest person in this field was Ali ibn Madini. Okay, so you can't really compare. These stuff. Can one close his eyes while praying and feel in the heart while he prays, or is it necessary to keep looking at the sujood? I believe on this. Okay, am I back? Can you hear me? I don't know. My laptop decides it's not work. It was probably I don't know what happened there. Okay, where was I? Yeah, Ali ibn Madini rahimahullah was the greatest person in ilal al-hadith, so finding defective narrations in hadith. So this was his field in hadith, that he was the master of this field, and different imams they had their specialties, and you can't really compare them in that manner. It's like comparing, I don't know, it's like comparing orange juice with apple juice. They both have their benefits, so we can't really go through that. Okay, so on the topic of closing the eyes during prayer, generally it is considered makruh to do so, to close the eyes during prayer. But like I said, there is ikhtilaf, and inshallah you can go research this. For example, Al-Izz ibn Abd al-Salam said it is okay, and Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he said it is even recommended to do so if it helps you focus in prayer. So like I said, that's the opinion of Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, but it is a matter of ikhtilaf. Okay. So the brother he wants to know what is ikhtilaf. Ikhtilaf simply is when the ulama they disagree based on different principles and different evidences that they prioritize and so on. And there is nothing wrong with ikhtilaf. Okay. So does touching the wife break the wudu? And the answer is, according to the Shafi'i madhab, yes. Not touching the wife, touching any woman you can marry breaks your wudu. This is the opinion of the Shafi'i madhab. It breaks your wudu except when you are in tawaf. And in tawaf it is impossible because you're going to touch everybody. So in the case of tawaf, it is okay. You don't have to do wudu, but every other situation it breaks the prayer. According to the Hanbali madhab, it is only breaks your wudu if you touch a woman with desire. According to the Maliki madhab, it only breaks the wudu if you touch the woman with intention. And according to Hanafis, it doesn't break the wudu at all, even if you kiss a woman. So if you touch your mother, no, because your mother, you can't marry your mother. It's only women you can marry. Okay, I think we've gone on long enough, so I think this is a good point to end on. All for attending and benefiting. And if you benefited anything, inshallah, this is from Allah. And if there's anything that was confusing or you feel like I misled you on, this is from influence and from shaitan. جزاكم الله خيرا all for benefiting. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم انصر المسلمين ودمر أعداءك أعداء الدين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.